The first sign that the world has truly ended isn't the silence. It's the moment you realize the silence has weight, the kind that presses against your ribs and makes your breaths feel borrowed. No sirens, no engines, no distant hum of electricity, just an empty, waiting stillness. And in that stillness, you notice the sting on your arm, a cut, nothing impressive, nothing heroic, the kind of wound you would have ignored 1,000 times before, but now it looks different, a bit meaner, as if the world, stripped of its protections, has decided to turn even the smallest mistake into a death sentence. You tell yourself not to panic as you peel back the cloth you wrapped around it earlier, but panic arrives anyway. The skin is swollen, angry red, hot enough that the air seems to shimmer around it. A slow pulse throbs beneath the surface, each beat sending a spark of pain up toward your elbow. And then you see it. Faint red streaks, thin as threads, creeping upward like cracks in glass. In the old world, you would have gone straight to urgent care. They'd clean the wound, prescribe antibiotics, tell you it's nothing to worry about. By Tuesday, you'd forget it ever happened. But now, the pharmacy on 5th Street is a pile of blackened rubble. The clinic on Maple has been stripped clean for weeks, and the cut on your arm is no longer nothing. It's a clock, a countdown. People think apocalypse stories are about monsters, explosions, dramatic battles for survival. But the truth hits you now with a cold, sinking clarity. Most people don't die from spectacle. They die from small things they didn't take seriously. And as the heat spreads beneath your skin, you understand the new reality. Here, in the ruins of civilization, even a simple wound can choose your fate. Survival in a collapsed world never begins with medicine. It begins with prevention, quiet, unglamorous, repetitive prevention, the kind of discipline that feels excessive in the old world but becomes sacred when every mistake carries a price. Long before anyone in the wasteland learns how to treat an infection, they had learned how not to create one. Clean water becomes a ritual, almost a religion. You don't drink anything unless you boiled it until the steam rolls out in heavy clouds. It doesn't matter how clear it looks, how cold it feels, or how desperately thirsty you are. You boil it because you've seen what happens otherwise. Bodies doubled over as dehydration strips them from the inside, fevers climbing, consciousness slipping. You boil because the alternative is dysentery, and dysentery doesn't negotiate. Hands, something you touched 100 times a day without thought, become a liability. In the wasteland, hygiene isn't about cleanliness. It's about survival mathematics. Every surface is a potential threat. Every object carries a risk you can't see. You wash your hands not out of habit, but because it's the last line of defense between you and the billions of invisible organisms waiting for your exhaustion to give them permission to invade. Whatever soap you have becomes precious. When soap runs out, ash and sand fill the gap. Not perfect, but enough to strip away what would otherwise spread. Food preparation, once casual and comforting, becomes a solemn ceremony. You examine every cut of meat like a surgeon. You cook everything until there's no doubt left, because parasites and bacteria thrive in shortcuts. Raw vegetables are no longer refreshing. They are suspicious until washed in purified water. Even leftovers, once harmless, become potential threats because time itself is now an ingredient that can turn a meal into poison. This is the survival philosophy of the New World. Simplicity over complexity, discipline over improvisation, prevention over cure. The body is vulnerable and the wasteland is unforgiving, but the patterns are predictable if you respect them. Survivors don't wait for fevers to rise or wounds to redden. They maintain small daily habits that keep disaster from ever gaining momentum. The great irony is that none of this knowledge is complicated. It doesn't require years of medical school or sophisticated equipment. It requires consistency, attention, and the humility to do the boring things every single day without fail. The old world taught you to take hygiene for granted. The new world teaches you that it is your shield, the only one that never runs out or breaks in your hands. And in that quiet shift, from reacting to preventing, you begin to understand the second truth of survival. You don't endure the wasteland by fighting crises. You endure it by refusing to give them the chance to begin. The first time you enter a ruined pharmacy, you expect it to feel like opportunity. Shelves lined with solutions, drawers filled with relief, a treasure house of everything you once trusted to keep your body in check. But what you actually find is chaos. Aisles torn apart, packaging shredded, glass glittering across the floor like frozen dust. Desperation passes through a place like a storm, and you can feel it in the air, heavy and restless. Every person who came before you was looking for the same thing, safety in a bottle, and all of them left believing they didn't find enough. In the first 72 hours after collapse, the obvious items disappeared instantly. Narcotics, stimulants, anything with a reputation, a street name, a pop culture meaning. People grabbed what they recognized, not what they needed, but what they didn't understand. And what survivors must learn fast is that the real value in a pharmacy lives in the boring aisles. The bottles nobody looked twice at when the world was normal, the medications that never made headlines, never became addictive, never trended online. Those quiet essentials are now priceless. Antibiotics are the crown jewels of the wasteland. Names you might have skimmed on labels before, amoxicillin, azithromycin, ciprofloxacin, now become lifelines. These aren't optional supplies, they are the difference between a treatable infection and a funeral. And in a lawless world, dosing instructions printed on bottles transform into sacred doctrine. Every pill has a purpose, every schedule a meaning. Stopping treatment early isn't just careless now, it's an invitation for bacteria to evolve, adapt, and return stronger than before. Pain relievers and fever reducers, once forgotten in bathroom drawers, suddenly matter more than ever. Ibuprofen, acetaminophen, naproxen, these names become part of your survival vocabulary. They reduce inflammation when swelling threatens mobility. They keep fevers from climbing into dangerous territory. They buy you time, clarity, the chance to act before the situation worsens. But here too, knowledge is the line between safety and damage. Too much acetaminophen and the liver collapses quietly. Too much ibuprofen and the stomach erodes. Relief always has a cost, and you must know how to pay it without overdrawing your body's limits. Antihistamines, those simple, sleepy little pills, gain new respect. In the wasteland, an allergic reaction is not an inconvenience, it's a countdown. 15 minutes can close an airway. 15 minutes can drop blood pressure to the floor. Diphenhydramine becomes a shield you never ignore. It calms reactions, buys breathing room, and doubles as a sleep aid on nights when fear refuses to let your mind settle. Then there are antiseptics, hydrogen peroxide that hisses as it kills, iodine that stains your skin the color of survival, alcohol that burns but saves, gauze, tape, bandages, all the mundane objects you barely noticed in store aisles now become the first line of defense against a world overflowing with bacteria. These supplies hide in medicine cabinets, maintenance closets, glove compartments, always present, always overlooked, until now. But scavenging is never peaceful. Pharmacies turn into arenas where desperation collides. You're not the only one who understands the stakes. Others arrive with the same hunger in their eyes, the same trembling urgency in their hands. Some will search alongside you, some will wait until you're distracted, some will take what you found if you hesitate, so you move with purpose. You enter with a list already burned into your memory. You know what you need, you don't linger on what you want. In the wasteland, greed doesn't just slow you down, it marks you for the world to swallow. Understanding this marks the third truth of survival. You don't live by finding everything, you live by knowing exactly what matters. Long before medicine was sealed in amber bottles and organized behind pharmacy counters, it grew in the dirt, unlabeled, unpolished, waiting for anyone who bothered to learn its language. When the world collapses and the shelves go empty, that ancient pharmacy is still there, silent but alive all around you. Yet it demands something the old world rarely required: absolute certainty. In nature, the line between cure and catastrophe is sometimes a single leaf wide. One mistake can mean paralysis, seizures, heart failure, or a quiet collapse you never rise from again. In a wasteland with no doctors, no antidotes, no second chances, almost sure becomes a death sentence. The rule is rigid. You never use a plant unless you are completely, unquestioningly certain of what it is. But if you learn the shapes, the smells, the textures, if you pay the price in patience and practice, Nature offers remedies that humans have leaned on for thousands of years. Willow bark becomes aspirin long before laboratories refine it. The inner bark holds salicin, a compound your body transforms into pain relief and fever control. Strip it thin, boil it into a bitter tea, and you create a primitive but effective tool against headaches, muscle pain, and rising temperatures. It isn't precise, it isn't fast, and it definitely isn't pleasant. But in the wasteland, effectiveness matters more than comfort. Plantain, the weed crushed under millions of footsteps, becomes a healer once again. Its broad leaves, packed with allantoin, soothe inflammation and coax damaged tissue to mend. Crush the leaves into a pulp and press them onto cuts, scrape, stings, or burns. The relief is immediate, the healing real, and the plant itself is everywhere. Sidewalks, fields, abandoned lots. Even apocalypse-level neglect can't kill it. Dandelion, once the sworn enemy of manicured lawns, becomes an ally. Its leaves burst with vitamins A, C, and K, the very nutrients that keep scurvy and malnutrition at bay. Its roots, roasted and brewed, offer a bitter drink that wakes your mind and settles your stomach. Every part of it is edible, every part carries value, and it grows in the forgotten corners where people no longer look. Yarrow stands like a quiet soldier in meadows and fields, its feathery leaves hiding chemicals that help blood clot. For centuries, warriors packed it onto wounds to slow bleeding. Crush the leaves and apply them to shallow cuts or capillary bleeds, and it will do what it has always done: stem the flow, ward off infection, and give your body a fighting chance. Sheep sorrel, small and sour, becomes another source of precious vitamin C. Eaten raw or brewed into tea, it strengthens the body and sharpens the senses, but like all wild plants, its strength demands respect. Consumed in excess, its oxalic acid becomes harmful. And then there are the dangers, the pretenders, the plants that look almost identical to the ones that help. Hemlock masquerades as wild carrot until your lungs forget how to breathe. Foxglove could be mistaken for a harmless bloom until your heart trembles under its toxins. Death camas resembles wild onion, right up until it destroys the nervous system with clinical precision. Nature is generous but never forgiving. It offers medicine, but only to those willing to study its patterns with the seriousness of survival itself. Identification is not a quick glance. It is comparing multiple features, checking habitats, examining stems, leaves, smells. It is refusing to take risks when hunger or fear tries to rush your judgment. And because plants vary, strength shifting with season, soil, and climate, you start small, observe, and adjust. No two batches of willow bark tea are the same. No two leaves carry the same dose. Nature does not standardize. It offers possibilities, not guarantees. You dry what you harvest, store it away from light and moisture, label every jar with name and date, because the mind, months later under stress and exhaustion, will betray you. But the plants will not. They remain what they are if you recognize them. This is the fourth truth of survival. The earth will heal you, but only if you learn its language and respect its rules. Fever in the old world was an inconvenience, as something you treated with a pill, a cold cloth, and a day off work. But in the wasteland, fever becomes a message written in heat across your skin, a warning flare that something inside your body has declared war. The first thing you notice is the trembling, the way your muscles shake without your permission. Then comes the heat, radiating outward in waves, clinging to you like a second, burning skin. Sweat drenches your clothes, but the cold air still feels like knives. Every inhalation stings, every exhalation feels too shallow. This is not discomfort, this is biology turning itself into a weapon. Yet here lies the misunderstanding that spreads faster than illness itself. Fever is not your enemy, not at first. Fever is your body's attempt to burn out whatever invaded it. Bacteria, viruses, parasites. Most pathogens that infect humans don't perform well at high temperatures. Raising body heat is your immune system's version of lighting the battlefield on fire to drive the enemy out. It is brutal, efficient, and older than civilization. Survivors learn to watch the numbers with the seriousness of someone reading coordinates on a map. Below 103 Deribi, 39.5 Degrixis, the fever is working for you. It drains your strength, but it fights on your behalf. You don't rush to smother it. You help your body hold the line. Hydration, rest, warmth, calm breathing. You monitor, you endure. But once the fever passes that threshold, the balance shifts. The weapon your body forged becomes a danger to everything it's trying to protect. Sustained high temperatures disrupt brain function, strain organs, and can lead to seizures or permanent damage. At that point, action is no longer optional, it's survival. If you scavenged well, you reach for pharmaceutical tools, acetaminophen to lower temperature, ibuprofen to reduce inflammation and pain. Each works differently, each has limits you must heed. An overdose isn't a mistake, it's an execution slow and silent. In the wasteland, even relief carries consequences. If the pharmacy shelves were bare, nature still offers a hand, though slower and less predictable. Willow bark tea, bitter as tree sap, mimics aspirin's chemical pathway. It cools the body, but not quickly, and preparation under fever's tremor feels like climbing a mountain in a storm. External cooling becomes essential, but it too has rules. Lukewarm cloths, never ice cold, laid across the forehead, neck, wrists, and feet. The goal is gentle guidance, not shock. Extreme cold triggers shivering, and shivering drives temperature higher, the opposite of what you need. But no matter how carefully you treat the fever, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Fever is not the disease, it is the alarm. Something beneath it is escalating. A wound turning septic, water turning hostile inside your gut, a respiratory infection slowly flooding your lungs. You can lower the heat, but unless you find the source, it will return stronger, angrier, more determined. In the wasteland, fever is not just a symptom. It is a story, one that tells you exactly how long you have left to find the cause and confront it before your body can no longer fight for itself. This becomes the fifth truth of survival. You don't fear the fever, you fear what created it. The beginning of an infected wound is almost always quiet. A sting when you flex your hand, a pulse of discomfort when you accidentally brush the injured skin against something. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, just a reminder of a moment's carelessness. But the wasteland does not tolerate carelessness, and a wound does not stay quiet for long. What begins as a harmless cut easily transforms into a ticking clock, each hour tightening the noose around your chances of survival. Imagine you scraped your palm open on a jagged piece of metal while scavenging through a collapsed building. You told yourself you would clean it properly later. Later became tomorrow. Tomorrow became never. Now, 2 days in, the injury has reshaped itself into a threat you can feel with every heartbeat. The skin is red and swollen, heat radiating from it like coals beneath the flesh. Cloudy discharge leaks from the center, and then you notice the thin red streaks snaking up your arm, lymphangitis, the infection mapping out its route toward your bloodstream. Once those streaks appear, you are no longer fighting a wound. You are fighting the prelude to sepsis, and without modern medical care, the odds tilt sharply against you. This is why survivors treat every wound as if it is already trying to kill them. Because in this world, it is. The first step happens immediately, not later, not when it's convenient. You flush the wound with the cleanest water available, ideally boiled and cooled. You scrub away dirt, debris, tiny fragments invisible to the eye but deadly if left inside. It hurts, it always hurts. The pain is temporary. Infection is patient and merciless. Next comes disinfection. Hydrogen peroxide hisses as it destroys what it touches. Alcohol burns like fire but sterilizes effectively. Iodine paints your skin in harsh amber, turning the wound into a battlefield marked for cleansing. And if all else fails, even high-proof alcohol meant for drinking, not healing, becomes a crude but life-saving alternative. Once the wound is clean, the world offers its natural allies. Real honey, thick and golden, becomes medicine. Its hygroscopic nature pulls moisture from bacteria, dehydrating them, killing them with silent precision. It produces mild hydrogen peroxide on contact, layering protection over the raw tissue. Crushed plantain or yarrow can help too, ancient remedies that soothe inflammation, slow bleeding, and provide light antimicrobial support. Then comes the seal. A clean bandage, changed daily, keeping contaminants out and healing in. Every change is a checkpoint. Is the redness shrinking or expanding? Is the heat fading or intensifying? Does the wound smell clean or foul? These details are not optional. They are survival diagnostics. But if the infection continues to advance, if swelling increases, if fever rises, if the red streaks lengthen, then hesitation becomes lethal. You turn to antibiotics, if you were fortunate enough to find them, amoxicillin for skin infections, azithromycin or ciprofloxacin for broader threats. The instructions printed on their bottles, once overlooked, now become sacred scripture. You take the full course, never stopping early, because stopping too soon teaches bacteria how to survive your next attempt. Yet the wasteland is cruel, and sometimes the shelves were empty when you arrived. Sometimes the people before you took everything that could have saved you. Then all that remains is discipline and hope. More cleaning, more frequent bandage changes, more honey, more rest. Elevating the limb to slow swelling. Drinking water even when appetite vanishes. Staying alert to every shift in sensation. Some infections can be beaten with diligence, others cannot. That is the brutal truth survivors learn. Biology doesn't care about fairness, and wounds don't forgive laziness. This becomes the sixth truth of survival. Every wound is a threat, and the ones you underestimate are the ones that end you. Dysentery never announces itself with drama. It doesn't roar into your life the way an injury might, nor does it burn like fever in the beginning. It starts as a twist in your gut, an uncomfortable pressure you mistake for bad food or a stressful day. But within hours, the truth begins to unfold, sharp and unforgiving. Cramping intensifies, sweat gathers across your forehead. Then comes the sudden rush to relieve yourself, only for the body to betray you again minutes later. What follows is a cycle of loss so rapid and relentless that it becomes clear this isn't inconvenience, it's the early stages of a silent execution. In the wasteland, dysentery is one of the most common killers, not because the illness itself is always severe, but because of the speed at which it steals the one resource the human body cannot lose: water. Every episode of diarrhea pulls fluid from your system in violent waves. Every drop lost strips away your ability to think clearly, move steadily, or regulate temperature, though dehydration is not a symptom. It is the true threat, the real predator hiding behind the sickness. When your body loses 10% of its water, coordination falters, thoughts become cloudy, muscles tremble. At 15%, organs begin to fail, and the slope toward collapse becomes nearly vertical. Survival does not depend on comfort. It depends on how quickly you replace what the illness steals. This is where the world's simplest, most powerful medical formula becomes your lifeline. Oral rehydration solution. 1 liter of clean water, 6 level teaspoons of sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, stirred until everything dissolves, and then consumed slowly but steadily, even when your stomach rebels. The sugar and salt are not flavor, they are science. Without them, the intestines cannot absorb the water you drink. It will pass straight through you, offering no relief while your body continues its downward spiral. You monitor your urine like a survival gauge. Pale yellow means safety. Dark amber means danger. Brown means rhexis. No urination at all is a silent declaration that organs are on the brink of shutting down. Your instincts will beg you to stop the diarrhea, anything to plug the dam. And anti-diarrheal medications can do that. They slow the intestines, ease the panic, give you temporary respite. But survivors learn a frightening truth. Sometimes stopping diarrhea is the worst choice you can make. If the cause is bacterial, those medications trap the infection inside your gut, giving pathogens more time to multiply and release toxins. Fever alongside diarrhea, blood in the stool, or severe pain all suggest infection. And in those cases, you let the body purge. You hydrate relentlessly and endure the misery, because forcing the illness to stay inside you is far worse. When available, antibiotics, especially fluoroquinolone class 1s, can end bacterial dysentery before it progresses into something catastrophic. But antibiotics require certainty and caution. Wrong drug, wrong dose, or wrong diagnosis, and you risk causing more damage than the illness itself. In the end, the easiest path is the one taken long before symptoms appear: prevention. Boil every drop of water until it rolls violently. Use purification tablets when firewood is scarce. Wash hands before eating, after relieving yourself, and anytime you touch something suspect. Cook food thoroughly. Avoid raw vegetables unless washed with purified water. No shortcuts, no exceptions. Because when exhaustion hits, when hunger clouds your judgment, when thirst tempts you to gamble with a stream or puddle that looks clean enough, dysentery waits for exactly that moment. This becomes the seventh truth of survival. You don't die from dysentery, you die from believing water can be trusted. In the early days of collapse, people cling to objects: flashlights, knives, bottles of pills, bandages, anything they believe will guarantee survival. But as the months stretch on, as supplies shrink and the world erodes into something unrecognizable, a colder truth emerges. Every tool breaks, every stash empties, every resource runs out. What remains, what always remains, is the knowledge carried in your mind, sharpened by experience and weighted by the memories of every mistake you survived. The wasteland strips life down to its core rules. It teaches you that antibiotics are temporary, that painkillers eventually dwindle, that antiseptics fade into the last drops in the last bottle. It teaches you that even the most carefully assembled first aid kit can be lost in a moment of chaos or stolen when hunger makes someone desperate. Skills, however, cannot be taken. Understanding cannot be looted. Awareness cannot be burned down with a pharmacy or buried beneath the collapse of a clinic. You start to realize that survival is not a matter of equipment, but of clarity. You learn to read symptoms the way ancient navigators read stars. A fever no longer frightens you, it informs you. A wound no longer surprises you, it makes you act before hesitation can cost you a limb. Water is not consumed on trust, but on certainty. Food is not swallowed unless your instincts and knowledge both agree it is safe. You begin to practice in the calm moments so you do not fail in the critical ones. You build habits and refine them. You read whatever medical guides you salvaged, where there is no doctor, field manuals, scraps of notes left behind by people who once worked in places where help still existed. You create systems for organizing supplies, protecting them from moisture, heat, and time. You check expiration dates, rotate stock, label jars, and teach others what you know, because in the wasteland, knowledge hoarded is knowledge wasted. And somewhere along the line, you begin to notice the shift inside yourself. You no longer wait for rescue. You no longer hope for someone else to know what to do. You become the person who knows, the person who acts, the person who understands that survival is not an accident. It is a discipline. In the quiet moments, those rare hours when danger loosens its grip, you sit with the reality of everything you've learned. No heroes are coming. No system will return to save you. But you are no longer helpless in the face of what once terrified you. You carry the skills that keep you alive. You carry the reflexes that turn panic into action. You carry the calm that comes from understanding what the body needs and how to give it. And perhaps that is the final unspoken lesson of a world without doctors or hospitals or certainty. The wasteland does not reward the strongest. It rewards the prepared. It rewards the observant. It rewards the ones who never stop learning. This is the eighth and final truth of survival. Tools may disappear, but knowledge endures, and it is the only medicine that never runs out. In the early days of collapse, people cling to objects: flashlights, knives, bottles of pills, bandages, anything they believe will guarantee survival. But as the months stretch on, as supplies shrink and the world erodes into something unrecognizable, a colder truth emerges. Every tool breaks, every stash empties, every resource runs out. What remains, what always remains, is the knowledge carried in your mind, sharpened by experience and weighted by the memories of every mistake you survived. The wasteland strips life down to its core rules. It teaches you that antibiotics are temporary, that painkillers eventually dwindle, that antiseptics fade into the last drops in the last bottle. And it teaches you that even the most carefully assembled first aid kit can be lost in a moment of chaos or stolen when hunger makes someone desperate. Skills, however, cannot be taken. Understanding cannot be looted. Awareness cannot be burned down with a pharmacy or buried beneath the collapse of a clinic. You start to realize that survival is not a matter of equipment, but of clarity. You'd learn to read symptoms the way ancient navigators read stars. A fever no longer frightens you, it informs you. A wound no longer surprises you. It makes you act before hesitation can cost you a limb. Water is not consumed on trust, but on certainty. Food is not swallowed unless your instincts and knowledge both agree. It is safe. You begin to practice in the calm moments so you do not fail in the critical ones. You build habits and refine them. You read whatever medical guides you salvaged where there is no doctor, field manuals, scraps of notes left behind by people who once worked in places where help still existed. You create systems for organizing supplies, protecting them from moisture, heat, and time. You check expiration dates, rotate stock, label jars, and teach others what you know, because in the wasteland, knowledge hoarded is knowledge wasted. And somewhere along the line, you begin to notice the shift inside yourself. You no longer wait for rescue. You no longer hope for someone else to know what to do. You become the person who knows, the person who acts, the person who understands that survival is not an accident. It is a discipline. In the quiet moments, those rare hours when danger loosens its grip, you sit with the reality of everything you've learned. No heroes are coming. No system will return to save you. But you are no longer helpless in the face of what once terrified you. You carry the skills that keep you alive. You carry the reflexes that turn panic into action. You carry the calm that comes from understanding what the body needs and how to give it. And perhaps that is the final unspoken lesson of a world without doctors or hospitals or certainty. The wasteland does not reward the strongest. It rewards the prepared. It rewards the observant. It rewards the ones who never stop learning. This is the eighth and final truth of survival. Tools may disappear, but knowledge endures, and it is the only medicine that never runs out.